Okay. Great. Well, I'm pleased to be joined by Abdiaziz Ibrahim, founder of Immigrant Housing Solutions and a passionate advocate for affordable housing. I guess I'll just read a little bit from your bio first, Mr. Ibrahim, and we can go from there. But should mention that Abdiaziz is a recent 2022 Bush Fellow. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But just by way of background, Abdiaziz is passionate about connecting immigrant families and families of color to resources that build economic mobility, especially safe, decent, and affordable housing. As founder of Immigrant Housing Solutions and with deep experience with property management and federal rental subsidy, he's in a unique leadership position to help families access affordable housing in Minnesota. He sees a significant need for property management companies that are owned and operated by people from his community. And he knows how difficult it can be for families to find decent housing and to understand their rights as tenants. So Abdiaziz, first of all, congratulations on the Bush Fellowship. So before we talk in depth about your background and some of your affordable housing initiatives, I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about being a Bush Fellow and what that means for your work.
Thank you for having me, Brian, this morning. Yes, I'm elated. I'm very grateful for the opportunity that was awarded to me to be a Bush Fellow for the year 2022. I just want to share with you and your audience is I have been applying for Bush Foundation for several times, at least 3 times in a row. And it's a very rigorous process, quite challenging. And I actually was eliminated at the quarterfinal stage the year 2021, 2021. And then I reapplied the same year. So, and I got selected this time around, which is the year 2022. I'm very much happy about that, and I was looking forward to it. It's a different process. It's writing your plan and writing about your track record and explaining what you will be doing with the fellowship. So I'm not really well versed with talking about myself most of the time. So I was dwelling on the projects. So I just want to say that to me, it's an honor. I know there's probably 600 other individuals from our region who applied for it. I'm very grateful and I'm looking forward to this once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah, well, congrats on that. And just by way of background from the Bush Foundation, the Bush Fellowship provides fellows with up to $100,000 over 12 to 24 months to pursue education and learning experiences that help them develop the skills and relationships to foster large-scale change in their communities and region. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, first of all, some of the work you do as founder of Immigrant Housing Solutions and how you became so passionate about affordable housing.
Yeah, let me start with how I became so passionate about affordable housing. Actually 15 years ago, I was helping an immigrant family, translating for them because they had problems with bedbugs in the unit in St. Paul, downtown St. Paul. So they had problems explaining that to their site manager. So I went with them to the leasing office and I explained what they were facing. The problems was bedbugs and some roaches in the unit. So after that, I filled out paperwork for them. Then I found myself imagining the possibility of being a site manager. So I went to Indeed.com and then I Googled a property manager. I figured out what the property manager does. And then I applied for a position. Um, Maybe a few weeks after that, I got an interview position. I was called and I was asked questions about my background. At that time, I had no prior knowledge about prior experience about property management. So I went through different interviews and I told them that I'm, a quick learner and I'm really interested in this position. So they gave me a position, a property manager position in South Minneapolis to manage 4 sites. Most of these sites were low income housing tax credit. And they were very diverse tenants. And I was pretty young then. I got into it with a lot of gusto and determination. And I started managing caretakers, maintenance tech, stuff like that. And I started talking to construction people, rehab people, painters, during turnovers. I started doing showings and all that. So I loved my job and I stayed with that company for 5 years, at least I remember. And it was an opportunity for me to talk to tenants about their problems. Some people need upgrades in their units. They were asking for new carpeting, flooring, and stuff like that. There were like issues between neighbors that needed resolution. So I found myself doing, mediation or conflict resolution. That time, I started working with a lot of what we called, subsidy programs, like people with Section 8 vouchers. The project, some of the units were low-income housing tax credit, like I told you, like Section 42 home units, and others. So I started getting familiarizing myself with different programs and funding options for these management, units. That's how I got involved into the world of housing the first 5 years. And then after that, I went and worked with another company called Common Bond Communities, which is a leader when it comes to affordable housing here in the state of Minnesota. And then this time I worked in project-based housing, and then the paperwork was quite large and I started doing maintenance. I actually was working with maintenance. I was working with compliance, a lot of forms to be signed to make sure everybody is eligible for their units and stuff like that. And this one was more diverse. It was in East St. Paul. There were people from Southeast Asia. There were people from East Africa. There were American-born tenants. There was, a lot of diversity in terms of culture, food. I found myself doing a lot of national night outs, a lot of collaboration with the police, city officials. And then they had a very good program, Adventure Services program, where there was after school tutoring, family counseling, and stuff like that. So I stayed with that company for a while again. And then sometimes in 2015, I got a position with the International Institute of Minnesota, which is a refugee resettlement agency. They were looking for a housing manager. Then I started working with them again, housing refugees. And then for the last 7 years, I've been working with the Met Council, Section 8 program. So I just found myself, I found a career and I stuck with it.
Yeah, great. And so when did you found Immigrant Housing Solutions, and talk a little bit about that?
Yes, that part. So now Immigrant Housing Solution has been in existence formally for 1 year right now, during the COVID time. But I just want to reiterate that I've been doing a lot of volunteer work within my community. After work, I will volunteer in the local, community centers here in St. Paul, filling out paperwork for someone, doing housing search for people in my community. So I found myself doing that for several years. And then when the pandemic hit in 2020, there was a lot of need in my community. A lot of people found, there was a culture of going to these government offices. If, let's say, for Section 8, people to fill out paperwork, meet with their caseworkers, and all buildings were closed, and nobody had access to these buildings. And a lot of people don't have access to internet, computers. They don't have access to scanners and stuff like that. They don't remember their username and password for the portal system, right? So that's when I found that there were a lot of people struggling to keep their housing because of paperwork requirements, verification of income, trying to reach out to their caseworkers. That's when I created Immigrant Housing Solutions, which helps with paperwork primarily, whether you are sending the paperwork to your Section 8 worker, or you're sending the paperwork to even property management companies. You do need recertification. That's the word. Annual recertification, interim certifications. There's a lot of need for paperwork. Filling out paperwork itself correctly, right, and then submitting this to government offices. And then, among other things, I started doing housing site support, which is there's a lot of need, whether you have a voucher or you are looking for a place to rent whatsoever. There's a lot of housing crisis going on in the Twin Cities Metro. So I started doing that. And then we slowly started with a little bit of training, tenant education training, and then a little bit of financial training in financial literacy training in multiple languages, right? So that's the beginning of it. It's something that we just started, and we are very hopeful that it's gonna actually succeed and help a lot of people in our community.
Yeah, how's that going so far? Have you been able to help a lot of people navigate these challenges that you talked about with paperwork and everything else? How many people have you been able to help so far?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So a lot of people who come to us, a lot of them are East African new immigrants, right? And the ability to speak their local languages really help. Yes, we have helped quite a number of people so far. I've had volunteers come in to help me during the like Minneapolis Public Housing opened their Section 8 waiting list, and we announced that to our community, and they came to get help with that. So I'm thinking maybe somewhere close to 320 people applied the week it was announced. And application process is super easy for someone like me and you, that a lot of folks who don't have internet, they have to create again a username and a password. They have to have an email address account. They need to know the language, so it's quite challenging for them. So I've had volunteers coming to help me, and people are just streaming to the offices, very orderly, waiting for each other. So we filled out a lot of waiting list applications that time. People actually come because of problems with finding housing. Again, they want to move here, or they want to move to another city, or they want to move from suburbs to the inner cities or stuff like that. So they need help with all that. So I can tell you for sure, we helped more than 300 families with the applications of MPHA when it was opened quite recently, a few months back.
Okay, great. And I see from your resume, from your bio on your website, that as an ombudsman for the Met Council, you've successfully housed 500 families in the last 3 years. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that informed the work you're currently doing?
Yes, of course. This was a precursor. Yes. So I'm really passionate about housing site and housing placement for low-income families. So sometimes in 2015, when I was working for the Met Council, it's called Metro HRA.
Mhm.
They had wanted someone with the property management background to work with landlords and then work with families. Basically, there's a lot of people who had vouchers, but they were not finding housing.
Mhm.
So they stay on the waiting list, and then once they get the voucher, they're not successful in placing their vouchers. And after a certain amount of time, their voucher expires, right? It's one thing to get the voucher, it's another thing to place it somewhere.
Mhm.
So they created a position, they called it ombudsman stroke outreach and engagement coordinator. So my main job was to educate the families on Section 8 and educate the landlords, try to demystify the myths about the Section 8 program.
Mhm.
There's a lot of negative connotations associated with being with having a voucher. So I designed a program where we were educating our families about the importance of being good renters, ready renters, importance of paying your rent on time, how to build your credit, always stay away from eviction. I say eviction is life sentence. I mean, if you have eviction in your record, it's really, they call it unlawful detainer here in Minnesota. It's really hard to find housing.
Mhm.
So started working with these families, right? Some of them have low credit scores. Some of them have stuff on their background, uh, misdemeanor, gross misdemeanor, maybe a felony. Uh, some of them are very low income that, landlords are again requiring you make 2.5 or 3%, 3 times what the rent is. So it was, I've been working with people from out of state, coming to our jurisdiction, pouring in with their vouchers. So if you come from Minneapolis or if you come from Seattle or Washington, DC or Chicago, you come here with your voucher and you don't know where to find housing. So I have to jump on that. It was a very good opportunity for me to work with these families. I've actually worked with a lot of homeless folks too. People who, for example, I remember working with a lady who said she's been homeless for 20 years and she has an 18-year-old daughter, and her 18-year-old daughter was born in the streets. So stuff like that. A lot of vets, people with VASH vouchers, a lot of chronic homelessness people, uh, people with special needs in the community. The story is long. So
Mhm.
that's those are the families that I'm referring to when you talk about housing search. Housing search has been my flagship. It has been, I'm really passionate about that because I mean, I can tell you I have not been able to successfully place all of them, but
Mhm.
maybe placed maybe 30% of the people who are looking because the capacity is one thing, and a lot of people have a lot of challenges. They will
Mhm.
still have their voucher expire before they find housing. So that's a little bit about my background in doing housing search support. And I
Mhm.
don't think there's a, I mean, there are no agencies doing that here in the Twin Cities Metro. There's a lot of need for that, but I'm sure there isn't enough people doing that.
Yeah, well, congratulations on that work. What can you say on the about the capacity issue? There's been a lot of talk about the need for more housing, frankly, at all levels of affordability, but especially affordable housing, not just in the Twin Cities, but across the state. Do you have any ideas on how to increase that capacity and just free up more housing for the people you serve?
Yeah, there's a high demand for housing and there is low supply of housing right now. Um, just basic ideas is to produce more affordable housing, construct more, find out ways of working with local government to construct new affordable housing, whether that's going to be money from the federal government or from the state government or from the local government, or sometimes maybe private companies through corporate social responsibility can chip in, right?
Mhm.
I think so the simple answer is produce more housing, because right now rents again are very expensive. If they are rents are very high, there's an affordability issue with rents, and rents are high, utilities are high. Landlords are charging high rents, they're charging utilities. And when we talk about affordability in the language of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it is anybody who pays less than 30% of their income towards rents and utilities.
Mhm.
It's really hard finding. I mean, there are people who pay less than 30%, but majority of the folks out there that pay more than 30% of their income towards rents and
Mhm.
utilities. So I'll just say produce more housing. It has to be there has to be a multi-sectoral approach. Different government agencies, philanthropies, foundations, corporate sector have to come together to chip in to produce more housing.
Yeah, and I think it's really something that's needed across the board in all communities. There's a lot of talk about businesses having trouble finding workers, but the workers also need a safe and decent place to live. So it all kind of works together, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. There's workforce housing. They call it workforce housing right now. A lot of people who live in, let's say, metro area cannot afford to live in that part of town because the rents, they're being aged out.
Mhm.
Is the issue of affordability. It's happening across the nation, not only in Minnesota. It's quite worse in probably places like California right now,
Mhm.
where everybody is moving out. And those who can afford actually can live farther away. But you know, when you when you age out a low income person who's got connected with school system, community centers,
Mhm.
uh, you are, you know, you're just scattering people away. It does not really help a lot. So yeah, that's the word for it. They talk about workforce housing.
Mhm. Can you talk a little bit about your future plans? I know it says in your bio on the Bush Foundation website that you want to expand affordable housing through outreach to landlords and property managers and by providing a holistic combination of tenant education and financial literacy training. We talked a little bit about that. Um, it sounds like you're also pursuing a master's degree in business administration and wish to obtain certificates in community building and leadership development and work with a coach to build stamina and well-being. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So yes, I just want to broaden my knowledge when it comes to running a nonprofit organization, running an efficient office, working with volunteers, working with co-workers, and working with the community. And I think the best option is to pursue a master's in business administration. I want to create good relationship with management companies. They're really struggling with their tenants. There's a lot of conflicts sometimes between tenants themselves and between tenants and property management companies. I have uh, I have for the last 7 years I've had good relationship with landlords in our region. Mom and pops, big management companies, some companies which are owned by people outside the state. I want to use that to educate landlords about the importance of working with low income people, whether they have Section 8, whether it's a low income housing tax credit property or project based. So I just want to leverage that. I want to use my expertise and my knowledge to help the low income families. I also want to work with families themselves. And when I say families, they can be one person or 10 or whoever, to actually give them the tools they need to succeed in housing access. For example, tenant education. They need to know what their rights are, but they also need to know what their responsibilities are. What I tell people is treat this unit, whether it's a 1 bedroom or 4 bedroom or 6 bedroom, as your own house, like you own it, right? Because you own it, because the landlord has entrusted this unit with you, right? So make sure it's clean and orderly. Make sure the utilities are paid. Make sure your rent portion is paid. Make sure you're good to your neighbor. Make sure you take care of grass mowing, lawn care. Make sure you do snow removal. Don't attract rodents. Don't attract, stuff like that. People really want to hear. Some people are first-time renters. Some people are also struggling with, keeping their units clean and tidy. But you need to educate people about this. Majority of the folks are really doing a great job. I also wanted to expand my knowledge on this aspect of providing housing search. Like I said, that is the backbone of what this organization will be about. Connecting with more landlords and connecting more families with places to live. I want to mention the importance of conflict mediation and reconciliation between landlords and tenants. And then I also want to amplify documentation support, filling out the paperwork, forms. There are several forms to be filled out by families, helping them with that. And then I want to mention the importance of home ownership. You're not going to be a renter for the rest of your life. Some people will move to being a homeowner one day. So, actually telling them, if you're paying rent right now, you can save up some money to be a homeowner one day. And then what are your rights? What are your responsibilities? How, 101, the basics, how to be a homeowner. And, before you even think about it, think about, your credit score and stuff like that. So all these things are a little bit related. They are interrelated. But I just want to, focus on those things. And I think the best thing to do right now is to invest, because the Bush Foundation has invested in me. I'm going to take some time to attend conferences, network with community leaders, network with professionals in the field, um, attend seminars, conferences, hire a coach. I also want to be healthy, right? Maybe hire a coach for my own personal health and my own personal health and wellness. Yep.
Well, great. Well, congrats again on the fellowship and good luck with your work. Sounds like you're doing some amazing work out there. So I wish you continued success. And thanks again for joining me. Are there any additional thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I just want to encourage anybody out there who wants to apply for the fellowship to think about doing that. I know there are a lot of leaders in the community. There's a lot of unsung heroes in the community. If you are not selected, don't tire away. Don't feel demotivated. Apply again. Talk to Bush Foundation staff. They're very helpful. And I just want to thank you and your paper organization for inviting me to this space. Thank you so much, Brian.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, sir, and have a great day. Hopefully we can connect again sometime in the future.
Thanks, Brian. Bye-bye.
Right. Take care.